In this video, I would like to give you a little bit more further introduction into deformation tools, which are very common in CAD. You know already the bend curve modifier, which is kind of like a flow command, because we can take a surface or a structure and let it flow bend along it. So let's say we create a plane there. And then maybe here we move those up to the center point. Okay. A, I, and point 1. So we can make an insert face. This face, for example, we can delete. And this one we can snap down and delete. So let's say this is just a small U shape. And we would like to give this a thickness. Let's say 10 centimeters. Okay, perfect. Good. And then we will give this an array along the y direction, maybe by 3. Okay, and maybe let's say 10 elements. Good. So with the curve command, I can kind of like make this flow nicely along an area. And I showed you with the shells, we can bend a shell and then we can still in edit mode modify the height position of the shell so we have a compound curve deformation. But let's say I would like to deform this really more in an irregular way, and the goal is that you always maintain a very simplistic input geometry because you want to work more generative. So the tool of choice, if we want to stretch and squeeze and distort proportions, is the lattice. So Shift A, lattice. Think about the lattice just like a volume. So first we want to make sure this one is roughly at the center. Ideally, because I work with the grid, we want this one to be really perfect. 1.4. Okay, then I can move this one up there, and then in object mode, that is fine, we scale this one so it includes everything. A little bit of overbuild. Okay, good. So what we can do now, let's take a look at the lattice. So we have U and V and W. When we go into edit mode, you can see there are points we can move. We can actually, let's see here, there you see we can add additional points. Also there we can add additional loop cuts, and the same here. So let's maybe start with something simple like this. And what we can do now is we say this mesh will be influenced by the lattice, and based on how I manipulate now in edit mode the lattice points, the mesh will be changed. So first we need to add the lattice. There it is, to deform. And let's select the lattice. Nothing happened, but the fun starts now when we start pushing this point, and there you can see now we can actually create nice arcs. So it's a really quick way to explore this idea. So let's say we add 2 like this. You see, then we can, for example, be more explorative. The more steps we have, obviously, the more detail we have to play with. Let's say 1 here. Now we can push this one down, down, and down. And here we push this one up. You see, these lines actually go up and down, but they don't really arc. Well, actually, kind of like I have a C here. The main reason for that is the lattice, sorry, the mesh object doesn't have any geometry there. I only work with these points. So if I, let's say, here add more loop cuts, bang, see, we have more geometry and we can deform this more. So it's up to you to decide, do we want to make this nice and organic? Well, then we need more geometry points to deform. And if maybe I just would like to use the lattice to deform beams of steel, well, then we just have to work with a basic geometry and we'll do then the work for us. So you see, because this is a modifier, we can always turn it off and on. So this is actually, again, an interactive deformation. Pretty nice. When we select the lattice, there are also some additional options. For example, linear, that then creates very linear, so strict translations. You see this is now a line because it follows kind of like this line. If we set this to B-spline, then it smoothes out the transition a little bit more. There you can see, for example, this is now, the mesh is more like a curve because it puts kind of like a curve through these points, if you imagine it that way. Okay, and that's basically everything about the lattice. The last thing, where the lattice is also important. So when you want to move something, you can't just move the object or the lattice. Lattice is a very popular tool in animation, but in any situation where you need to deform, twist or something, it can also be very useful for product design. So if we want to move something, we want to move all at the same time. And the last thing I would like to show you is here you have this icon with a vertex group. So what's a vertex group? So we'd have to make a copy of this one. Shift D, move this onto a different layer, and then here I will apply this solidify modifier and the array modifier. So I have more geometry. Okay, and now I will select, besides the first three, everything else. This is now a selection. And when I go to the data panel, there's vertex group. So we can actually create predefined selection of the vertices inside a mesh object, similar like to Fusion 360, where you can create a selection of objects. Here we can create a selection of points. So let's say this one we call lattice. Click assign, press A, click select, and then only those should be selected. Perfect. Good. And now when we go ahead and say do this deformation, but only use the lattice, you see then the first two don't do anything and the others actually get deformed. And we delete this, there it's back. Can also, for example, play with the influence or the strength of the deformation compared to fully deformed and not deformed. Okay. The nice thing is, when we are here in edit mode, we can just continue adding stuff to it. So let's say I go to here, and then from there I will add this to there, and then we need some loop cuts there, and maybe let's think about this as some structural support. Bring this to there. And that's actually, oh, this was turned off. You see, then it goes with it. But hey, what's going on with them? Well, they're not part of the deformation the vertex group. So I would have to, for example, add them accordingly to the vertex group as well. there. Okay. And you see, of course, the first don't really work because the ding ding ding, they do not influence or are not influenced by the lattice. So you have to make sure if you want to exclude something, like in this case, then I have to be a little bit smart and pre-plan the parts I want to be deformed, which I do not want to be deformed. But most times the lattice here we can then use to deform actually a complete object. Okay, next one. So let's make a cube. It's important that for the moment you notice the cube has the center point at the cube center. Let's make some quick cuts. Okay. And let's go to simple deform. So what does simple deform do? We have, for example, twist. So we can twist it. And we have bend. Can bend it. See, this looks very linear because we actually do not have any cuts. So let's add some cuts there. See, now there's our bend. We have taper. Well, okay, that's pretty simple. Stretch. And we can squeeze it. This is, for example, a bouncing ball. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Okay. So the thing that's, for example, important to know about the bend is the orientation. So let's say we have a vessel, and that's, I'm going to show you now where the bend command comes in very handy. Let's say there's a Coke can, and we have now a texture which we will apply onto a label. Let's say this is our UV unwrapped label. And this one I would like to bend around this bottle. Now I could draw the curve. Now, do you use a curve modifier? Of course, but with the bend command it works from the center to the left, right, top, down. It's circular, so I could easily do that with the bend command. And now I need some additional points to bend. And we can get this very close. Okay. Then let's go back to bend again. So bend, perfect. So, and bring this over, for example. Now we can hug it. There. So you see that actually the axis it bends around is actually the z-axis. So here with negative or positive, this bends across the z. Now let's say a ARX rotate minus 90. And then I bend the part this way. We can unfortunately not necessarily define how to bend it in here. We can use a different object, for example, for the axis. So let's say here U. So I think this will work that way. And then if we rotate this one, see, then there it borrows that orientation. So that works. But before I do something that complicated, then I simply rotate my object in object mode, in edit mode, so that the mesh is perfectly aligned the z-axis. So this makes then sense. The last thing I would like to show you, because I was talking about the object center, is let's say we have a cube, and then here again we add some points. Let's go simple deform, twist, that's fine. And you see that the bottom twists as much as the top, because again it goes from the object center to the top to the bottom. So if in edit mode I move this away, so it is above or at or flush with the object center, you see that the bottom area then maintains the straight square. And then from there, top everything rotates. Pretty nice. And also here we could, for example, select all these points and then say assign, and then here use this group. Now you see everything's being deformed besides the bottom area. Pretty cool. So one last quick exercise to show you now how maybe bend and lattice can be used. What's the best application? Let's say we make quickly a vessel, Coke bottle or so. You can just make a circle, scale this one up, scale this one up, scale this one down, scale this one up, or any type of a vessel. This can really be very, very brutish, doesn't need to be very beautiful. Okay, and maybe one inserted there. Let's add a subdivision surface modifier, AA Control N, and now I will go ahead and I do not want to select those, so I hide them, and I B and H hide them. And now I can go ahead and say you and you, there, there, and there. 3, 3, this one, 3, 3, 3, okay. S, Shift, Z, and I scale those in. There, now we have a nice groove structure. At the beginning it's nice and round, circular, at the bottom it's nice and round, and then you see with those grooves we get this really nice structure. So now I would actually like to spin this. So we can add a simple deform, and there you see it beautifully spins. But if we pay attention to, we can see it spins from the bottom to the top. There's also here a slider where we can, for example, adjust how much or what type of limits we have. So you see it only twist kind of like in the center a little bit. So now we are kind of like twisting the whole object. I'm going to make one there, select all those, E, escape, S, Shift, Z, Control R, let's move this one up, and there we have a small lid, ding. Okay, so that was a twist one. But let's say I want to be more able to where I only wanted to twist, and maybe the lower area I don't want to twist, and then the top area I want to twist more. So in that case, lattice is going to be our best friend. Now we pluck a lattice over it. So now, see, this is now the area where in industrial design or for product design, for concept development, this is much faster to do than creating all these cross sections to control the twist correctly. And then let's see, which one is it? Nope. Okay, it's this one. Ding, 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 ding. Let's say till there. Okay, perfect. Good. Let's add the lattice. Great. And now I could go ahead and start this one, and then R and Z, R and Z, R and Z, and then step by step rotate it. But way too much work. This is, for example, now in another area where the proportional editing comes in very handy. So R, Z, I have to create a bigger influence. And there you see now how nicely everything spins, and then step by step it spins last till at the end it's flat. There. So, and the trick is I can always turn this on off, and you see it's changed. Shift D, let's make a copy, M and 2, go to the second layer, and I will delete the lattice deformation for this object. And I could, for example, select all this and say, well, still with proportional on R, and I run Z, and I do the proportional deformation also directly in edit mode. So the mesh is now really permanently deformed. So the advantage of here is the mesh is a little bit more stable, and everything is permanently done. But being permanently done, that's also, well, the problem. To, for example, be able to undo this step, let's say we rotate this one RZ by 50 degrees. Okay, so this is something now you would have to memorize, because with the same point selected, RZ minus 50, we can re-rotate it back. So it's nice and straight. So that's the up and down side and the flexibility. And here, because this is all nicely done and interactively, you see I don't really have this problem. There's only one other issue. You can see that this actually gets smaller a little bit. So let's see what the problem with that is. So this lattice I delete. Let's make another lattice. Bring this one up. Scale it, S and Z. There we are, and there. Okay, perfect. So we had actually more of these steps added. Perfect. And now I will add some additional steps, maybe this way. And let's say I only want to have the outside points on the body. Okay. Deform with the lattice. There. R and Z. Let's rotate it. Let's pay attention to what's happening. See, it can sometimes get a little bit twisted, and there it's getting smaller and smaller because I'm actually, totally twisting this surface. No, so we have to be careful about it. But maybe one thing we could do, we could say, well, maybe this area I rotate, and then let's say there, and then the others I rotate back, kind of like in a way that the top area remains flat, but the problem is you saw that R and Z, if I do it a little bit more, well, I'm twisting this area again. So that doesn't work really well, but what if maybe all those I select, let's turn on proportional, R and Z, and then rotate it. See, that's it then. So because I have the upper selected, they don't twist, they just kind of rotate. R and Z a little bit more, let's say till there. There. Perfect. Turn it off and on, off and on. Okay, good. Okay, so I hope that this gave you a quick, brief introduction into the lattice, the bend command, some of the basic function that it has, and then also where, for example, the lattice can be used to create an abstract shape, like here where we want to deform something more while maintaining the basic geometry untouched. And for example here, classic application of the lattice when we want to do a twist deformation.